What's going on, everyone? Today I want to talk about using color filters in black and white photography. Now, this is something I'm fairly new to, but I just went out and shot a roll of Kodak Tri-x400 medium format with a red filter, and I wanted to share the results because I actually found it pretty interesting. So first, I want to talk about why we would use color filters for black and white photography. So if you've ever started in black and white photography, one of the first things you probably notice is how hard it is to decipher between tonal contrast and color contrast. So you could have maybe like a red and a green object, like right back to back, say a flower, and with your eyes seeing in color, that may look super contrasty and like, oh, this is gonna look great, and you take a picture in black and white and it just looks the same color. Now, what using different colored filters allows us to do is to basically filter what light our camera is seeing. So in the case of the red filter, it's a pretty dramatic filter, so most of the light that the film is actually seeing is just from the red spectrum. So things that are red might appear as a brighter tone in the monochrome image, and things that are, say, blue, green, opposites of red are going to be a lot less bright and pronounced in the image. So what this does is create a lot more contrast, especially with foliage and other kind of like greens and landscape stuff with the sky. Yeah, I was just out on a hike and decided that I would shoot with the red filter, and then I shot a couple more pictures at a local airport of my girlfriend and my brother, and I think a couple airplanes with an orange filter because I lost the red filter for a second, but it's a similar effect. So I think this is a really useful tool that more people should use in their black and white film photography, because one of the pitfalls I run into a lot is just flat images, just not what I imagined it looking like, and I think this really made my landscapes pop a lot more. So we'll jump right into these images and I'll just talk about them a little bit. I'm gonna pull these images up on my computer and we will have a look. Awesome, I'm looking right into the light. This hurts. This is the first one. So the first two images I took were on the top of the hill, looking downward into a valley with a town in it. And there's a lot of different shades of colors on the hill. So there's dead grass up here, there's pine trees, there's rocks, and there was some green starting to come through because it is springtime. Now, I was afraid that on a normal black and white image that these colors wouldn't really pop, and I took a couple similar ones on Ektachrome that I will pop in here real quick, but using the red filter really allowed the sky, the blue, to be a lot more muted, and some of these brighter foliage colors to come through. I noticed especially on the pine trees, it really muted the green colors a lot, so I found that interesting. I think one of the next images I made was of these two towers on top of this hill, which were kind of a turnaround point, but I thought they were really interesting because for the entire hike, basically, it was just natural, kind of untouched nature, and then you just run into these two, maybe 200-foot tall cell towers on top of the hill, and I thought they were really prominent and interesting. I was hopeful that the red filter was going to make the contrast between these towers and the sky a lot more prominent, and it actually did. You can see that the sky is pretty dark, especially as you get higher off the horizon into the really blue section. It is like almost black up there. And also what we can see is in the, I think they're microwave, the round antenna thingies, there's a little like lightning bolt on them, and it's red. You can barely see that, which is showing that red is just almost passing right through the filter. I took a couple photos on my way down on the hike. So right at the beginning, there's actually this power line that looks to the other side. This is actually a pretty decent gap in the hill caused by a river. So there's two sides, and this face of this mountain in this gap is really rocky with some pine trees on it, and the red filter did a good job in creating great contrast and separation between the rocks and the foliage on the side of the hill, as well as with the sky. So I'm really happy with how this turned out. It's really moody, which I was going for. Another one of a similar landscape. It's the same part of the mountain except it was from a bridge on the road. I don't really remember exactly what color the bridge was, but if I had to guess, I would say the railing was green. I really do like the way that the sky looks in this image. The contrast between the cloud and the blue is really vivid. The next image I made was just of my girlfriend. We went on a little bike ride and picnic, and it's just kind of all our stuff laid out on the ground. But I think it's interesting how the red filter renders the skin tones. Everything looks really flat, and I think this could be useful in some scenarios, but not necessarily the most flattering in others. It's interesting, Jill's backpack is multiple different colors, and it just looks one shade here, so it's definitely showing that we are only seeing in one spectrum of light here. Alright, airport photos. The first two pictures I made were of I don't know what kind of airplane this is, and it's kind of embarrassing, but of an airplane refueling. Now, I can tell you that this airplane was blue with some red accents, so it definitely looks black in these images, or some other deep color that's definitely not blue. It was kind of a lighter blue. And the reds on the sides look almost white, which is really interesting. But we can still see that there's a lot of contrast between the clouds and the sky, as well as plane. Here's another one from the side. I know that that white looking stripe on the plane is actually red, so that is interesting to note. We have my brother sitting on a bike here. He's got some straw in his mouth. He's kind of funny. But the bike is white. The basket is, a wicker basket. But his hat is red. So I find it interesting that the filter didn't really let a lot of this spectrum of light through. It does look kind of a darker tone, even being a red hat. But the little moon is yellow on the hat, so that's interesting. Again, you can see the kind of flattened out skin tones where the contrast between his lips and his face is very little, so it's showing that we are only seeing in one spectrum of light. But I do like the way this image turned out with all the contrast and just the tones in general. Okay, here's another photo I took through the glass of the ridge soaring shed. So at this airport, there's, the regular FBO, and there's a little restaurant in there, as well as the flight school. And then another part of this airport is actually for gliders. So they have their own kind of, I want to call it a shed, but it's a little more than a shed, kind of hangout there. And I really like the way the light was falling inside of this little house, so I snapped a photo through the glass. Now, there's a lot of reflections here, but I kind of like the abstract look that I am getting with this. Obviously, the table is orange, kind of like a wood tone, so that actually came out pretty white. Yeah, overall, I'm pretty pleased with this picture. Okay, the second to last image, I believe. The second to last image is of Jillian leaning on a fence watching a freaking helicopter. So this was actually through the orange filter. I forgot to mention all the pictures at the airport were through an orange, not a red filter, so the effect is going to be a little bit less pronounced. But the stripes on her shirt were blue. Obviously her jeans were blue, and those are pretty dark. And the glider on the left of the frame is actually green, and it looks almost black, so you can definitely see the muted green tones in the grass where it is actually green and not dead, as well as the sky is definitely a darker tone, so we're just getting that contrast from limiting what we're seeing. And then finally I have a picture of some flowers I took. So I took this picture kind of as a demonstration for myself, but I think it's really cool because I know I took a picture on my phone and then converted it to black and white, and the contrast between the flowers and the surrounding greens was not that much because the flowers are white, but the greens were also pretty bright. Now with the red filter, the flowers are super bright. So we can see that the red filter is letting the white and the red spectrum of white pass right through, but the greens surrounding them are significantly cut back, creating a lot more contrast. Overall, I think that using colored filters for black and white photography is super, super useful, but you have to be careful with what filters you use and when. I think a red filter is pretty dramatic, especially if you're shooting portraits, but maybe a yellow or orange filter would be more suited to smooth out skin tones and increase the contrast a little bit. They're definitely super useful tools for landscape photography with black and white because it really creates this moody, dark sky and then really brings the clouds out. I'm extremely happy with the results of this, and I will be shooting again with a red filter. It is kind of awkward to shoot with the red filter on the twin lens reflex because you have to meter through the filter. It does steal a little bit of light, so you have to hold the filter up to the light meter and then hold the filter up against the taking lens because it doesn't have a screw mount. It is a little bit cumbersome to use with the twin lens reflex, but definitely if you have an SLR or some other type of camera with a screw lens, just go pick up a red, orange, yellow filter, any of those. I think I would recommend orange to start out because it is a pretty dramatic effect, but it's not super dramatic that you couldn't use it for everything. And just shoot a roll and see what it does to your images. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this quick video on color filters in black and white photography. I definitely found it interesting how this works and will definitely be using it in the future for other images. Anyway, until the next one, please subscribe, like this video, and leave a comment if you have any questions or just want to say something. Until the next one, peace out, guys.